everybody! Thanks for dropping by the craft table. I'm about to get into a new project, and before I do that, I always go to my stash first to double check my yarn to see if maybe I already have what I need to at least start the project and sometimes even complete it. This keeps me from going to the store and buying what can turn into duplicates and triplicates of yarn I already have. Anyway, when I get into the stash, inevitably I pass by those balls of yarn that are just weird. And I don't mean weird bad, I just mean weird as in limited project application. So I'm sure you guys have probably accumulated some of these weird balls of yarn, and by weird I mean strange texture or uneven flow of yarn or even a strange color combination or combinations of color and texture and weird flow. A lot of these balls of yarn may have been created as novelty for a specific purpose, and we get kind of caught up in the neat colors and textures and we buy a bunch and they wind up in our stash and then they sit there for quite a while because we're not really sure what to do with them. So I've got some of these weird balls in my stash and I thought I would go through a few of them today with you guys so I can show you some of the strange things I've collected and also maybe give you some ideas to use them in projects where you may not have thought to use them previously. A little while ago, there was an explosion of these crazy yarns that were mostly made with the idea that you would turn one skein into like a little scarf. So these are what I call sort of the odd scarf yarns. Now, I didn't wind up making scarves with any of these yarns, and a lot of these yarns came to me from friends and family who had bought it because they thought it looked cool, but didn't really know what to do with it after a while, and so they gave them to me. You've got the boa yarn. So it's a little tiny bit of a ribbon with these light, soft, fluffy little boa bits that stick down underneath it. They came in every single color. A lot of them came in variegated colors, and it's very soft and fluffy, and a lot of people made those boa scarves out of them. In the same category was the fun fur yarn. So this is the same sort of concept. You've got like a little ribbon running across the top and all of this much more fluffy, stuffy kind of fur-like yarn hanging out the bottom. Also came in a bunch of different colors, some of it variegated, and the recommended use was generally scarves. Eyelash yarn. This same concept has a bit of a ribbon running across the top, but the little strands that are hanging down below are further apart and much longer than the boa yarn. Also very soft, also recommended for scarves. And then all the holiday versions of that. So this came in every different kind of color. It was sort of more like the eyelash, except that it had tinsel in it. And I've got this in purple and red and green and a whole bunch of colors. So if you're not interested in making a scarf out of your boa yarns, what are you going to do with it? All of these pretty, great, big, fluffy, ridiculous balls of yarn, you can knit with or crochet with fairly easily. So they have a nice even flow, the colors are pretty, but if you don't want a scarf or a hat or something pickly against your face because it might make you sneeze, like me, then you can consider using these little oddball skeins for things like cuffs on a Christmas stocking. They make perfect fluffy Christmas stocking cuffs, and of course that's not going to be anywhere near your nose. You can use it as edging on a Christmas tree skirt. That looks really, really pretty and adds a bit of interest to it. And if it doesn't bother you, the edge of a hat, especially if you like elf hats and things like that, or cuffs on a fabulous festive little pair of mitts, a little bit of this, you don't have to do the whole project out of it, but just use it like a bit of an accent. It adds interest, it adds a bit of warmth, a little bit of zazz, and the texture's cool, so it doesn't necessarily look like you've got crocheted material attached to it. It actually, in some cases, looks like fur. So if you've got some of these balls lying around, consider using them like that. More crazy texture yarns. I've got several balls of this Lion Suede. This is from Lion brand. They call it Suede. It's literally half the size of their chenille or the Bernay blanket yarn. So same feeling stuff, but it's half the size, so it's a little skinnier. This, the label came with suggestions to make hats and scarves, and that's perfectly fine. It's not itchy or annoying or anything. And I did make hats out of this, but I didn't make typical woolly hats. I made fedoras and cloche hats. So I wish I had pictures to show you because they worked out really, really nifty, but they've all gone to new homes. But this, because it's a bit stiff and it sort of wants to stick to itself, When you make a hat with a short little brim, the brim will stick out. So it's got a bit of strength to it, and it's warm. So you can kind of make yourself a skinny fitting cloche hat or fedora for the cooler winter or the cooler temperatures. That'll feel like a wintry hat, but it'll look more like a stylish hat, and it'll keep its shape. So consider using the lion suede for that, because it looks really cool. Ribbon yarns. So I've got different kinds of ribbon yarn. Here's just one I'm going to show you. It looks more like it's been intentionally woven together as opposed to spun. In fact, it even looks a bit like someone's taken a crochet hook and hooked their way through a whole bunch of small fibers. There's a bit of sheen in this one, a little bit of a metallic thread running through it, and it's what I would consider a size 2 yarn, so a lightweight yarn. It's not the sort of thing you would turn into a baby blanket. Because it's small, it would take you forever to kind of knit or crochet an entire blanket with it. You can make hats and scarves and whatnot out of it, but it's not overly warm either. I like this kind of yarn and ribbon yarns for things like this. So my little crocheted lace collars and cuff projects. This is a little thicker than a size 3 crochet thread, obviously, and you have to adjust your hook size and definitely the kind of pattern you're using. But this does make for very pretty jewelry. It's not thick, so it'll still lie somewhat flat against your collar, and I have made a couple collars out of this particular yarn. I don't have them, so I can't show them to you, but I can tell you that they worked out looking really nice, and they had a bit of a gothic feel, just because of the dark color and a little bit of the metallic thread zipping through it. So I like that. I like these kinds of yarns for that kind of jewelry. So if you don't want to make a scarf, then consider making a bit of jewelry or like a lacy cuff or collar, because it doesn't use up a whole lot, and these balls don't usually come with much in them, and it's a neat piece to add to your wardrobe. Couple of vintage balls here. I've got several skeins of this actually in white and pink. A girlfriend of mine gave it to me. It belonged to her mother, who was quite old when she passed away, and she very, very generously gave me a whole bunch of her mother's old yarn. This is 30% wool and 70% acrylic. It's old yarn, so obviously I couldn't match it right now if I wanted to do a giant project. So that's something else you want to consider. A lot of these novelty yarns or oddballs come out and then that's it. So you can't necessarily leap into a giant project that requires a lot of it. It's got an even flow, so it's evenly spun, but it's chunky, it's fluffy and poppy and bouncy. And because it's got wool in it, it's a little on the picky side, so I don't think I would find this very comfortable against my neck or my face. So I wouldn't turn it into a hat or a scarf or even a blanket. But this yarn makes really great amigurumi. I have been using a lot of my pink and my white to make up little bunnies, my chibi chubbies, and also the pocket pets we did. I've made several out of this particular yarn because when you use a neat textured yarn in an amigurumi, especially with a little stuffed toy like an animal, you don't so much see the crochet stitches anymore, you just see the texture of the yarn, and it almost looks a little more real because it's got this slightly dense, fluffy effect to it. So this particular yarn, because of its nifty little sort of squiggly, bouncy spin, makes my little stuffed cats and bunnies look a little more like real stuffed cats and bunnies. So if you've got funny yarn like that and you don't want to turn it into clothing, then consider you turning it into some of your amigurumi, because it does make kind of nifty toys. And the last balls of yarn I have are big weird balls of yarn. So you may still be able to find various kinds of this yarn in the stores. It comes under different names, different manufacturers. It's basically really unevenly spun yarn, but it's considered a size 6 super bulky or bulky. So some of it is really, really skinny, some of it is really, really chubby, and it goes skinny, lumpy, skinny, lumpy, skinny, lumpy. Comes in a whole bunch of different colors. It's fairly soft, so it makes for fine scarves and hats. But if you don't like that weird lumpy look around your neck or your head, then I would recommend considering making home decor out of this. If you haven't got a whole lot, consider making a throw cushion, or at least one half, the front half of a throw cushion. And if you have a lot, consider making a throw for the couch. Chunky, fluffy, unevenly spun yarn like this makes for an uneven kind kind of wavy stitch look without actually having to do a fancy stitch. And if you have a typical couch, which most couches have sort of a smooth kind of fabric to it, they're not usually lumpy and bumpy, this makes an interesting contrast to your furniture because of the lumpy, soft, bouncy, fluffy kind of look that it has. So without doing really anything special, you could just do a simple single or half double crochet back and forth kind of project with a big hook with this. You can get a really beautiful throw blanket without a whole lot of work that will look really neat against your couch. So I would recommend decor for this stuff. Now, I don't know how many of you have ever seen this. It's called Bernay Gazoo. I wound up finding 3 balls of this years ago, and I bought 3 because it's the exact same color as my ski jacket. It's like the chenille. It's all anchored across the top, but every single little thing that hangs is actually a loop. You see, I can stick my thumb right through it there. So this makes crocheting a little challenging because every time you create a stitch, your hook will grab one of these loops and try to pull it back in with it. So you have to use a really, really big hook or a really big set of knitting needles. I decided I was going to make a big hat for my ski jacket because I liked the feel of it. I thought it was soft. I love the colors. And I figured a chenille-like hat would be really warm on the ski hill. I got through 2 skeins of it. It had only managed to make the cuff part, so basically the ear warmer part of the hat. And it was so hot because it becomes such a dense fabric when you crochet it together that I couldn't wear it. Even in -30-degree Canadian winters, I couldn't wear it. It was just too hot. So I have it lying around somewhere. I'm probably just going to turn it into stuffing at this point because I can't unravel it because of how complicated the stitching got, but I do have a skein of it left. And my only thought right now is to use it as a trim. I'm going to actually sew this to the edge of something, a blanket perhaps, so I would probably end up using this as trim because I really don't know what else to turn it into. So if you guys have any suggestions for use of this crazy yarn, or maybe you've got a ball of it too and you've done something with it, then let me know in the comment box down below. And with that thought, I would also like your ideas and suggestions for this red heart pompadoodle. This stuff is actually little pom-poms threaded together on one long string. It's easier to knit with, I find, than crochet with because knitting uses up smaller amounts, and when you get up to a pom-pom, you can just sort of like stick it on one side of the fabric or the other. I found when I was trying to crochet with this, it was a little more difficult. Also, I wasn't really in love with the fabric that I wound up making. I tried making just a simple little square as a sampler, and I didn't feel that it highlighted the fact that it's a bunch of adorable little pom-poms as well as it could have. So I have 3 beautiful balls of this stuff. I have it in purple and pink and this nice little green color. But I really don't know what to do with it. It's soft and fluffy and it's so adorable. And other than using it as some kind of trim, I don't really know what I would do with it. So if you guys have got Pompadoodle and you've done something with it and you loved the outcome, maybe you made a baby blanket and it was just super soft and adorable or something, let me know. I'd love to know what you guys came up with. And that's it for my weird yarn collection. I hope you guys had some fun watching this and maybe got some ideas for projects using some of the crazy balls you've got lying around in your stash. And we will see you soon here on the Jayda InStitches show. In fact, we will see you Friday. Until then, stay safe, stay crafty, and have an awesome week. Bye, everybody.